Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Evil, despicable, terror, disbelief, anger, chaos. But they have failed. Our country is strong.
8:46 a.m. Flight 11 struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. At 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 hit the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Then, at 9:37 a.m., Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. When the first plane collided with the North Tower, no one suspected that this could be a deliberate attack on our country. It was only until the second plane hit that we knew that this was no accident. The planes had been hijacked by a group that we later found out to be Al-Qaeda. Flight 93 was hijacked and intended for the White House. However, the heroic citizens on that flight had already heard of the previous attacks. They knew if that they didn't act quickly, more innocent lives would be taken. 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 crashed into an empty field in Pennsylvania. The brave citizens on board sacrificed their own lives to protect their nation's capital. Al-Qaeda attacked these important buildings because they each symbolized a different hatred that Osama bin Laden and all members of Al-Qaeda harbored for us. The World Trade Center was attacked due to being a symbol of great economic power. Bin Laden hated the American economic influence around the Muslim world. Second, the Pentagon was targeted out of hatred toward their strong military power, and bin Laden hated that we had troops in Saudi Arabia. Finally, the White House was intended to be the last target because it symbolizes the American democratic system. Bin Laden hated the spread of democracy in the Muslim world. But to truly understand Al-Qaeda's deep hatred for the United States, we must go all the way back to World War I. World War I was fought by France, Great Britain, Russia, and the US versus Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire. During this war, Great Britain was in dire need of assistance. As a solution, they asked Jewish scientists from Europe to develop better weapons for them to use in the war. In return, the scientists were promised their own country in Palestine. Also, Britain requested that the Palestinian Arabs rebel against the Ottoman Empire. They too were promised their own country in Palestine, the same land that had been promised to the scientists. With the help of these two people, Great Britain won World War I and took Palestine from the Ottoman Empire. The Jewish scientists began to move to Palestine. However, they fought with the Palestinians over the land. Seeking a solution, Great Britain stopped allowing the scientists to go to Palestine. After World War II and the horrible events of the Holocaust, Great Britain and the US realized that European Jews needed their own country in order to survive. Therefore, in 1948, led by the US and Great Britain, the United Nations formed the country of Israel and Palestine. Arabs living in Palestine were not consulted in the information of Israel, and in the lieu of its declaration, 5 Arab states attacked it: Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon. Despite the numbers, Israel was victorious due to their advanced weaponry and strategy. This proved that Israel is a country to stay. 1967, the Six-Day War. Again, the 5 Arab states planned a major attack on Israel. This time they developed better militaries and technology. However, Israel was also prepared, suspecting an attack. They attacked first. In a repeat of their last clash, Israel destroyed their militaries and took over the west bank of the Gaza Strip. These 2 places were home to many Palestinian Muslims. This was the war that first motivated Islamic extremists to begin using terrorism. And just as the terrorists chose symbols to attack, the date 9/11 was also significant. In 1979, the United States tried to create peace between Egypt and Israel. To do so, they bribed each country with billions of dollars and agreed to stop fighting. These negotiations took place between 9/5 and 9/17 and were called the Camp David Accords. On 9/11, the most progress towards reaching a peaceful agreement was made. Islamic extremists hated the peace that the U.S. had been able to create. Also beginning in 1979 was the Soviet-Afghan War, which occurred during the Cold War. The Soviet Union was trying to spread atheism around Afghanistan. However, the Muslim people felt strongly about their religion and their commitment to their God, Allah. A band of rebels formed to fight the Soviet Union called the Mujahideen used guerrilla warfare. During this war, another group called Al-Qaeda was formed to recruit people from around the world to fight the Mujahideen. The leader of Al-Qaeda was Osama bin Laden. In 1988, the Soviet Union pulled out of the war due to many deaths. The Mujahideen believed that their God, Allah, helped them win, when truly the United States was funneling them billions of dollars worth of weapons. A year later, in 1989, the USSR, also known as the Soviet Union, fell. Since the Mujahideen had defeated them only a year ago, they thought that they were the cause and believed that they could bring down any powerful nation. 1990 marked the start of the Persian Gulf War. Iran and Iraq had just finished a grisly war referred to as the Iran-Iraq War. As a result of this war, the country of Iraq was extremely lacking in resources and money. The leader of the country, Saddam Hussein, decided to invade Kuwait, a small, rich country in oil. After he took over Kuwait, he threatened to take over Saudi Arabia. If he successfully did so, he would control 25% of the world's oil production. Osama bin Laden hated the Iraq would dare to invade Saudi Arabia because it contained 2 of the most holy cities in Islam, Mecca and Medina. Therefore, he offered Saudi Arabia the help of the Mujahideen. The United States also offered their military assistance to Saudi Arabia because they were scared of the consequences of Iraq controlling so much of the world's oil resources. Saudi Arabia turned towards the U.S. for help, so the U.S. sent thousands of soldiers to Saudi Arabia as part of Operation Desert Shield. The fact that non-Muslim people were in control of Mecca and Medina angered bin Laden. This is when Al-Qaeda started planning terrorist attacks on the United States of America. With Operation Desert Storm, the United States won the Gulf War and liberated Kuwait from Iraq, invading the country of Iraq as well. In addition, the United States sanctioned Iraq, not allowing anyone to buy or sell with Iraq. The first terrorist attack on the U.S. by Islamic extremists transpired in 1993 when a group affiliated with Al-Qaeda attempted to blow up the World Trade Center. They placed bombs in a truck that they parked in the parking garage below the North Tower. They intended for the bombs to ruin the North Tower's foundation, thus causing it to fall into the South Tower. Luckily, the bombs weren't strong enough for this to happen. However, the explosion did kill 6 people and 1 unborn child. The mastermind behind this terrifying first attack on the U.S. was Ramzi Youssef. In 1994, the U.S. decided to intervene when Somalia was enduring a horrible famine that was killing thousands of their people. The United Nations, led by the United States, dropped crates of food from planes, intending to aid the starving Somalians. However, local warlords took over the bundles of food and exploited the starving civilians. In another attempt to help the Somalians, the U.S. sent troops there to make sure that the aid was going to the starving people. This angered bin Laden, so he sent reinforcements to the warlords in Somalia. During the Battle of Mogadishu, a U.S. helicopter was shot down and 17 U.S. troops died. This led to the U.S. withdrawing from Somalia, causing bin Laden to think that they were to kill just a few U.S. troops and the U.S. would give up. He referred to the United States as a paper tiger, appearing strong but easily beaten. Due to this mindset, U.S. embassies were bombed by Al-Qaeda in Kenya and Tanzania. These attacks were more serious because, in a sense, they were attacking U.S. soil. Gaining confidence in their abilities, Al-Qaeda blew up a U.S. Navy ship, the USS Colt. Suicide bombers drove a speedboat full of explosives into the boat. Due to the loss of engagement, the U.S. soldiers were not allowed to fire at Al-Qaeda, even though they had realized what was going on. 17 died and 39 were injured on the fateful day in 2000 off the coast of Yemen. All of these events played a role, whether it be small or large, in Al-Qaeda's hatred for our nation and planning the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. After the United States found out that Al-Qaeda was behind the attacks, they obtained information to let them know that Al-Qaeda was based in Afghanistan. The Taliban was the government of Afghanistan, and at the time, so the U.S. took out the Taliban and searched Afghanistan for members of Al-Qaeda. Since then, the U.S. has had the task of rebuilding the government of Afghanistan, which had led to too many conflicts. So far, this war has claimed the lives of 2,123 U.S. troops. Then the U.S. faced Saddam Hussein and his country Iraq for a second time. This time, the U.S. feared that Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and would ally with terrorists. Also, the United States wanted to promote democracy in Iraq because Hussein was a cruel dictator. So as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom, the U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003. They wiped out the Iraqi government and found Saddam Hussein, who had gone into hiding. Hussein was later brought before an Iraqi jury and sentenced to death by hanging. Since then, the U.S. has struggled to rebuild Iraq, and there has been constant violence. This violence has caused the loss of 4,856 U.S. troops. And even today, we still suffer the consequences of the attack on our nation. Around 13,000 brave rescue workers died that day, and the surviving 30 to 40% still do not exhibit improvement from the toxic dust. As of May 2011, 6,000 soldiers fighting in the wars in the Middle East have died, as well as 43,339 have been injured. The attack also increased hatred of Muslim Americans by other American citizens. People formed mobs and intentions of violence towards Muslim people. There was an increase of hate crimes, and committing these crimes, people were unknowingly helping our greatest enemy, Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda preyed upon people attacked and would tell them that Americans really did not want them and they should join Al-Qaeda. This allowed them to recruit a lot of new members. In addition to the horrible effects on our citizens, money that could be going to our education or helping to boost the nation's economy has been used to tighten up the security of airports. Billions of dollars have had to go into buying machines that can see through clothes because of the underwear bomber. Also because of Richard Reed and his shoe bombs. We have had to take off our shoes at the airport when we go through security. September 11th, 2001 is a day that will never be forgotten. Many people lost their lives that day, and families were ripped apart. Children without parents, parents without children, friends without friends, family members gone forever. 9/11 is an infamous day in our history, and our country will never truly recover.